There was a fight sequence that I affectionately call the worst fight sequence of all time, and they end up basically pulling each other's pants down. I'm not going to say exactly who did this, but we had a sequence where I'm walking off the set at the beginning of our film and someone catches fire in a stunt. It's not an easy stunt to do. Someone actually does have to catch fire and all of that. And there was someone who was calling out the cues for the stunt person and for me, and they had to go 3, 2, 1. And in a moment of kind of great tension, they forgot how to count and they went 3, 1. And somehow we managed to still all do it at the same time. And the explosion happened, the man kept fire, and I started moving at the same time. But it's very funny when people forget basic stuff like that. I think we sometimes have a tendency to kind of oversimplify making a movie within the context of a movie. And I think we really tried in a humorous way to kind of how that really kind of happens. And hopefully an audience will find it funny and amusing.
What are you doing?
You know me, I never do my own stunts. Clarky boy, you're up.
There were a few, and you have to understand that most of my experiences, certainly with 10 years of 24 and a few years of Designated Survivor, when you get used to doing television, your kind of scripts are developing as you're going. And so it's just constantly in flux. This was a very different experience. Tinsel Town was a finished script. I absolutely adored it. I thought it was incredibly funny. It's not something that I normally do or have really ever done, a full-blown comedy. And so it was just the right kind of balance of excitement and nervousness energy. As I was going through kind of the days of filming, you start marking off things that were special to you and you thought were going to work. And okay, yes, that one worked. And I'm really glad that the character is developing the way it is. And then you get to a couple sequences that you had not maybe anticipated working as well. And there was a fight sequence that I had with Danny Dyer that I affectionately call the worst fight sequence of all time. It's two guys who are pretending they're tougher than they are and they don't know how to fight. And they end up basically pulling each other's pants down. And that ended up being just it was not an easy day. It was a difficult day of shooting, but it's a wonderful experience when you're filming something that you think other people will really enjoy. And I felt that about that. And he was so much fun to work with. It took a little convincing because he plays a lot of tough guy roles and he is a bit of a tough guy himself, but he really leaned into it. And so we had a lovely day that day. And then getting to work with Rebel, who is a great comedian. And in this film, I think really approached her character from a much more dramatic point of view. And so I found her performance to be really kind of moving and touching. And that had a big impact on how I approached my work with her as well. And so the whole thing ended up just being a really fantastic experience.
Where the hell's London?
Well, it's 3 hours that way, sir.
We filmed north. We were based out of Leeds and we filmed in a bunch of small towns around that area. So it was cold. It felt like winter. And I think anytime, certainly someone like myself, who, if I'm going to England, the first thing I think about is London. And certainly my character did as well. And so when you get up to Leeds and you get out into that country, you really are in the country. And it's a very different kind of attitude. That was really informative for me along the way. I enjoyed myself a lot more than my character did in the movie. But again, thinking you're going to be in the West End of London and actually being in a very small town doing a pantomime in northern England is a very different experience. And so that was really helpful. But I ended up loving Leeds and really enjoyed my time there. We didn't have a lot of time. The dance coordinators, there was 2 and they were fantastic. It was a few very focused afternoons and then just kind of practice the whole way through the production. And luckily for me, the dance sequences and the singing and the musical stuff was really towards the end of production, and so that helped out a lot. But yeah, it was an opportunity, for someone who's been working as a professional actor for some 43 years, I think. It was a fantastic opportunity to do a bunch of stuff that I haven't done in that amount of time. And so whether it was the singing and the dancing, and more specifically the comedy kind of around what is a very touching story about a father kind of finding his way back to a relationship with his young daughter, it was a breath of fresh air for me.
Jill, is this a good time to tell you that I can actually sing and I'm a pretty good dancer?
Of course you are.
I had a couple friends of mine that were working on the film, and I just knew that it was going to be ridiculous enough that it was going to make my friends laugh, and it did. In fact, one of my friends refers to this film as, when is the clown movie coming out? What I really enjoyed about making this film, apart from the incredible cast, Chris Foggins as a director I thought was extraordinary, was really diving into a genre kind of headfirst that I was not very familiar with. And the Buttons costume kind of was the cherry on top, right? It's just so incredibly funny. And it's very refreshing to tell a story about someone who becomes a better person as their life gets worse. The farther down he went, the better human being he became until he finally comes out the other end. As a fable, that's an interesting story to tell. You obviously want to be prepared. You want to be on time. And I think for me, and it's not just Tinsel Town, but it's kind of every film that I've done, some days go better than others. That's just the fact of life. But I think it's really important to start the morning with real hope that this is going to be one of those really special days. And I think that that's really important to do. And then Maria Friedman and Mira Sayal and Danny Dyer and Rebel Wilson and Derek Jacobi, such an incredible cast. For me, it was really important to kind of really listen. I think that's a large part of acting. And so I was very open to kind of what those actors were doing. It was such a great opportunity to work with all of them. And I think they did such a beautiful job. It's a combination of being really hopeful that today's going to be fantastic and also being open to really listening to everybody else who's involved. Maria Friedman she improv'd a bunch of things that I just thought were fantastic. There was one scene where I was having a very serious conversation with a gentleman who was playing the mayor. And I turn around to go up on stage and there's Maria and she's chugging a bottle of wine behind me. That wasn't written, she just did it and it was absolutely hysterical. And so that was something that was also really wonderful is that the other actors that I had the pleasure of working with on this film, they were always improvising and they were always adding these kind of fantastic moments. So I think that really pays off. It's not so much loose, but it was certainly free and open. Chris Foggins, as a director, kind of creates that environment. And I think everybody kind of comes trying to make him laugh, and the stuff that works ends up in the film. It's a much more intense schedule than I think people might realize, so that you're working anywhere between 12 and 15 hours a day. So I think most people wanted to go to sleep. And then you've got people that live in the area, and then you've got people that are at a hotel. So there were moments where we'd be able to have a dinner and stuff like that. But it's, you know, when I look back on my experience, whether it was Stand By Me all the way to Lost Boys and Young Guns and all those films back at that time period where the cast and the crew all lived in a hotel together, and those days are kind of gone, sadly, because it was an awful lot of fun. But yeah, we got some time together, not as much as I would have liked. It's going to be so boring, but I think the thing that you end up worrying the most about is you finish work before the restaurants close, right? If you're living in a hotel and you don't have the kitchen. So it's really kind of mundane stuff like that. But again, I loved Leeds and the hotel we stayed at was fantastic and I felt quite taken care of there. I really did enjoy it. And with regards to work and what you kind of you set for just really understanding the text and knowing your material and going in prepared. I had not seen a pantomime before this film, and we got to Leeds and I saw a poster for a pantomime and I was like, fantastic, I'm gonna go see that tonight. And of course, it had closed 3 nights before. So I never got to see one. So I missed the pantomime in Leeds, and I also missed the football matches.
Kiefer, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. It's so nice meeting you, and such a pleasure talking about this really fun movie that I'm excited for people to see.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.